What's up, everyone? Alex here. This is For the Love of Video Games, episode 269. With me, as always, is the beast to my bell, my splinter to my shredder, Daniel Santos. What's going on, man?
I'm apparently Splinter?
Yes,
this time?
I like Shredder, so I figured you're Splinter this time. It's better than like me completely like butchering that Luigi Wario thing last week.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was good. At least this time it makes sense. Last time I was just like, what? I don't get it.
It's funny because I re-listened to that episode and I was listening to it and I'm like, yeah, that was total. Like what? Like my mouth was faster than my brain. Like I was all in my brain. It was already at the Luigi part and I forgot the wah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that was pretty bad.
See, that's funny because for me it's usually the other way around, where my mouth can't keep up with my brain.
It's weird, right? Like sometimes like you're faster, you're slower in some cases. Anyways, yeah, what's up, man? What's going on?
Well, have you ever heard, I mean, I'm sure you've heard. Have you ever played Darksiders?
Yes.
Which ones?
I have played 1 and 2, not 3.
Okay, because I just got 3.
Ooh, okay.
The intonation of your voice was just like, oh no, what did you do?
Well, like, I'm basing this off of people's reactions, right? Like, I know that, some people in the community, some people actually have made videos of it saying it's actually not that bad. So I'm still of the ilk because of the side of like people who are like, I don't know, man. Cause I mean, come on, $60, is a bit much, when that game got released.
Well, lucky for me, I got it on sale. So I got it for $40 with all the DLC. So I paid $20 less for more. So I think I came out a winner there.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So
a lot. Yeah. So just real quick, I've already beaten the first 2 games. I thought the first game was really awesome.
Yes.
It was a cool mix between, a lot of people said Zelda and God of War at the time. I actually felt it was more like Soul Reaver and Devil May Cry.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because like the way that the world design works in Zelda is like there's like the big open field that kind of acts like as a hub world that like leads into different areas. And that's not how Darksiders works. Darksiders is more like one large like continuous world.
Sure.
Which, not saying one way is better than the other. It's just, that's just how Soul Reaver is, and that's how I think Darksiders works. Mm-hmm. But anyways, the second game I thought was a pretty big disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that game I think starts off really strong, but then by the end of it, it just like peters out.
Wait. You're saying okay, what Darksiders is this again?
2.
Okay. I was like, for some reason, like I thought like you were talking about 3 already, and I'm like, wait, you beat it? And I was like,
no, I literally just got 3. Okay. No, I'm saying I thought the second one was disappointing.
That is pretty disappointing to me as well, because the main character is was voiced by the bad guy from The Crow. Man, he was pretty good voiced, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with 2 is that, well, the loot system is dumb. I don't know why they put a fucking loot system in an action game. Like, no.
It's funny because the way that I think about it, it's like, well, how far is Zelda from Diablo? And can we meet them halfway? I know, Darksiders too. That's my thought.
It's so weird. Like, I'm trying to do sick combos. I don't want to think about, like, the stats on my boots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the micromanaging and stuff, like with the inventory and the equipment, it just bogged the game down considerably. But anyways, Darksiders 3. No looting. Yay! I'm so glad they got rid of it. So it feels closer to the first game, which is good. Here's the thing, though. It has Dark Souls elements in it.
No! Why? Why does every video game have to be Dark Souls?
Yeah.
Ay. Okay, so you're saying I'm sorry. Like I just have this visceral reaction every time somebody tries to make their freaking franchise Dark Souls. I'm just like, oh, come on.
I mean, I don't mind it personally, but like I totally get what you're saying. So it's not as hard as Dark Souls, even though I would say it is more challenging than Darksiders 1 and 2 were.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do find myself dying a lot more in it than I did in the first two games.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not as like brutally punishing as Dark Souls is. Not quite.
I can imagine. I understand that was just a point of reference, but still, it's like, you know, it's like battle royale. You know, that's like the buzzword these days, right? Live services, Dark Souls-esque. It's just, come on, like. There are ways to be more innovative in games other than like just aping another mechanic. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it sickens me sometimes.
I like, but the thing is, I wouldn't say this is like a straight up imitator or a copycat. It more like, I would say that this has Souls flavoring, if you would. They put they got like a bottle of spice that said Dark Souls on it, and they put a dash of it.
So. You know, if we're using cooking terminology, instead of actually like having a red pepper inside the dish, it's literally just a powder of black powder,
yes.
Black pepper or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
So your Darksiders steak is still intact, but
okay, keep going.
But now it just has the Dark Souls spice on it to make it nice and spicy.
So it's like, is this like one of those like? So no, my metaphor is wrong then, because this is literally like, okay, it's let's cook an applewood smoked bacon. And instead of doing that, let's get the powdered bacon instead and just rub it all over. That's really the right metaphor for this. Wow.
It's got a nice dry rub.
Oh, God. Okay. All right. So it tastes like bacon, but not really bacon.
Well, I guess. So let me explain. Getting off the food, because I think this is starting to get weird.
Okay.
So what does that mean? What exactly about it is Souls like? Well, first of all, when you die, you lose all your souls, and you can get them back where you died.
So I mean, there's a lot of games that do something like that, right? Like, I mean, Shovel Knight does something like that. Hollow Knight does something like that. So it's
lots of nights.
Yeah, lots of nights. So it's a lot. So I get what you mean by that. Then okay.
And I would also say that that the world design is also like it has that similar Dark Soulsy feel where like areas are interconnected, like because in Darksiders 1 and 2 they didn't really do that. Like areas didn't loop back into each other, but they do in Darksiders 3, which I like. It gives the exploration kind of like this extra dimension to them.
Okay.
And here's the thing, though. They also have some Metroidvania style elements as well. What does that mean? Like that this is like a Metroidvania. So you actually get different elemental powers throughout the game. So far, I only have fire. I'm guessing at some point I'll get like wind or a few other stuff. And these actually allow you to explore different areas of the world that you couldn't before.
Mm-hmm.
So like, since I got the fire, I was able to break these webs that I can burn them up, and I can get access to areas I couldn't before.
Yeah, that's totally Metroidvania.
Yeah. So I hear that the game when it first came out was like a huge mess, like a technical disaster. I'm playing the PC version, so I don't know how the console versions are, but I can say that for the most part, it seems to play just fine. It did crash on me once, I will say. But, like, that was once across, like, 6 hours or so of game time. So...
It's quite a long time.
Yeah, and honestly, it wasn't even a big deal. It wasn't that far away from like a checkpoint, so it, for practical reasons, it wasn't really a big deal. I mean, it still isn't good that it happened, but if the game suffered really severely technically from when it came out, I can at least say that right now it seems to be a lot better. It seems to be very stable for the most part. I didn't really encounter, aside from that one crash, I didn't really encounter any other problems.
Okay, that's good. I mean, is it weird that these days, like, we're only asking for the games to just crash just once as opposed to multiple times? I feel like, that's becoming more of a prevalent wish these days, which, I wish games never crashed these days. It's kind of ridiculous.
Dude, I beat Fallout 3 on PS3. Do you know how agonizing that was?
Oof.
You know how many times that crashed on me? I even played New Vegas on PS3. That crashed on me even more.
Oh, awful.
I remember one time the game, like, it was Fallout 3, and I was like in one of those that cave with all the bunch of little kids, and then the game booted me out to the literal PlayStation XMB menu.
That's never happened to me on the PS3. That is insane.
It was wild. I remember I was playing the game and I was just like, wait, why am I on the menu? What's going on? Like, it's so weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gonna keep playing this game then? Or are you like in between this and Sekiro or something?
So yeah, here's the thing. I don't think I'm going to keep up with it. Not because I don't like it. I actually am enjoying it. But here's the thing. Neo, Sekiro, Darksiders 3. That's too many Souls-like games all at once.
So even if this is Souls-like, you're just like, not happening.
Not only that, but like I just came off of Devil May Cry 5, and the combat in it, while obviously nowhere near Devil May Cry 5's level in terms of like depth and complexity, it's still like a similar kind of game-ish. So I'm not really like, I'm the kind of person that like when I'm done with a game, like I want to play something else.
Right. Are you gonna go back and play the Bloody Palace update Devil May Cry 5 has?
Probably yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that explains a lot. Okay, so anything else?
I picked up that book, Chrono Trigger, that you recommended.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just started it, but so far I like it. It's like a very personal story of sorts about Chrono Trigger rather than it being like an in-depth analysis. It's kind of like just about a dude talking about it. And I like that. It gives it kind of like a more casual feel.
So it's like the Bible Adventures book we read like about a year ago? Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's pretty cool. All right. But before we continue with the rest of the show, and thank you for sharing a lot of that stuff, Daniel, like about Darksiders 3, at least now we have another opinion of Darksiders 3 out there and stuff. Well, we're going to be... What? What are you laughing
at? Now we have another opinion on this game out there in the ether.
No, I'm just saying, like, outside of, like, being on the periphery and reading other people's opinions, you have a firsthand, experience with the game. That's what I mean, man. Jesus Christ. Speaking of...
Just the way you say it was funny. It's just like we now have another opinion on Darksiders 3.
Okay, fine. Jesus Christ. Speaking of Jesus Christ, we're going to be talking about the Borderlands 3 reveal and the packaging and, of course, the release date and the exclusivity. That's going to be actually part of today's show. Also, we're going to be talking about... What?
What does that have to do with Jesus Christ?
Oh, man. Chat, can you provide that information? Can you, please? So that way...
Wait.
Yeah.
What am I missing out on?
Yeah. So anyways, and also before I continue, I want to share with you guys out there who are listening on Twitter, not on Twitter, I'm sorry, on your podcatching software. I guess they call them podcatching software now. And also on YouTube. If you go to bit.ly/BBArmy Discord, we always record our podcasts on our Discord with our community, and they're actively listening right now on, like as we're recording this and stuff. And you can join in the fun and actually participate on our shows, which we record every single week, right? So we're basically always going to be recording like around Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. And, we do this every single week. So we record the following week's episodes about a week in advance. This way, you get to hear the pre-recording banter that Daniel and I had. This week, it was like freaking Gone with the Wind versus Avengers Endgame or something like that, which is redonkulous. Then you can...
I'm sorry. I just saw what you were talking about. Holy shit! What is up with this Christ allegory for the cover art? Like, what the hell is this? What am I looking at?
You also said, "Holy shit," and I think that's also appropriate to describe this cover.
Yes,
right.
I would say so.
I mean, obviously, like it's an expression, but I don't think you actually meant it in that way. No, it just works.
No, I didn't.
Worked really, really well. So, okay, we'll be talking about that pretty soon. I need to get through like the rest of the things we're going to talk about. So we're also going to talk about Final Fantasy VII's remake getting a co-director. We're going to be talking about like what he's worked on and stuff, who the hell this guy is. And we're going to also be talking about Zanki Zero Last Beginning, which, I actually am reviewing. So this conversation that Daniel and I are going to have, and of course the people here in the Backlog Battle Royale Discord, which is bit.ly/BBArmy Discord. We're going to be talking about that game and just share a little bit of tidbits about the review that I basically released but by the time this episode actually comes out. And the last one is a hot button topic that a lot of people are talking about, both fans and and the media alike, and also game designers and stuff, which is accessibility, which is the difficulty versus the handicap, which is basically like there was an article that was released on Forbes. Ironically enough, they basically like canceled themselves out. So it's like a -1 and a +1, and they just canceled themselves out. The article was called Sekiro Shadows Die Twice needs to respect its players and add an easy mode. And then, of course, they wrote an article that says, no, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice absolutely does not need an easy mode, which I'm like, you just can't make up your mind, Forbes, seriously. But that's probably going to be the bulk of our conversation today. But before that, let's talk about Borderlands 3. So, Daniel, you have now seen the artwork for the box. And by the way, thank you for Kitlin for posting that in the chat. And again, if you guys want to join us as we're live recording this, it is bit.ly/BBArmy Discord. Yeah, go for it. I'm doing jazz hands here. You can't see me.
What is up with this box art? Just what is this?
I don't know. It's actually one of 3 different box arts. There's actually 3 box arts for this game.
3. Why 3?
3.
Because it's Borderlands 3.
I kind of threw that out there earlier. It kind of went over some people's heads. So, but yeah.
Okay, because I played the first 2 Borderlands and they had absolutely no Christ allegories. It had no anything to do with religion or Christianity or anything. Mm-hmm. This just looks weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it's to me like when I saw this, like okay. By the way, we also want to talk about like how this is revealed, right? Not the box art. The box art came later. But when it was revealed during PAX this weekend, me and a bunch of people at the Backlog Battle Royale Discord, again, bit.ly/BBArmy Discord, we watched the unveiling, and oh my god, I kid you not, Daniel, they were literally trying to play 4K resolution videos on a dinky laptop using Windows Media Player. A 4K resolution video. You can imagine that the frame rate was freaking terrible. So it chugged every single time. Not just for the Borderlands 3 video itself, but also the revealed that the Borderlands Handsome Collection, which has basically all the Borderlands games in the past, including the pre-sequel in 4K, that chugged too. And when they revealed Borderlands 3, it was so... It was kind of like soul-sucking because obviously everybody was like so excited about the game. And of course, the people in the chat and stuff, if you guys want to share like your opinions on what happened, it kind of took the momentum out of the announcement. Because literally, like, what you could hear as they were playing the video, the crowd at PAX, like, chanting for them to download VLC.
That is awesome.
Yeah. It was pretty freaking nuts. And, you know, there were a bunch of people here who were, like, basically, like, watching it, and we were like, what's going on here? Also, before the announcement, freaking, like, Randy, like, you know, Pitchford basically did a magic trick. Which
I
I'm
heard
like,
about that.
Yeah, about for the card game. And I know he's kind of like a magician, because if you look at Randy Pitchford's Twitter handle, it's Duval Magic. I don't know if Duval is his magician name or anything like that, but that makes a lot of sense, right? That he's called Duval Magic on Twitter, and it's just his official Twitter account. And, you know, I don't doubt his magical prowess or anything like that, but I'm pretty damn sure his magic didn't mean shit when he couldn't materialize VLC or a brand new laptop that can actually display 4K movies onto a big freaking screen. Yeah. That happened.
Yeah. Yeah, not to mention, didn't you just have a controversy that happened not that long ago, and he's already like, hey, forget about that. Here's a magic trick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember what the controversy is and stuff, to be quite honest. If the chat, like, wants to share, like, it, I don't quite remember. But other than that kind of launch and stuff, like the reveal for the game, they managed to play it. But after the first time they actually played the video, you know what's funny is that the people here on, you know, bit.ly/BBRE Discord, like, they literally just pasted the link to the YouTube video of the actual video that they were trying desperately to play. And we just watched it. Like, we're just like, all right, whatever. Like, their stream is dumb. They tried replaying this same freaking video like 3 times, man. And it was Jesus all like, Christ. Yeah, it was a, you know, crap storm right there. Really crazy. Oh my gosh, something about child porn on a USB at medieval times. Oh. Yeah,
that's what it was. I was trying to think, like, it was something sexual in nature, but I didn't remember exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jesus. Okay. And I guess Jesus is the appropriate term for what's going on these days, sadly. Anyways, yeah, it's weird because they're really courting controversy, right? With, like, a lot of their decisions. Also, probably the most controversial decision that they actually made. And of course, Gearbox claims that it's not them, it's the publisher that did this. A 6-month exclusivity contract with Epic Games Store for 6 months. Until April 2020. That's the only place that you can get Borderlands 3 on PC. And with the latest news about, like, Epic Games Store not being safe and all that stuff, a lot of PC gamers are actually up in arms about it. And, like, they're saying, like, they're going to boycott the release in September.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, like, I heard somebody talk, I was talking to somebody and stuff, and they said, like, they're just going to wait until, with their friends until the game releases in April on Steam. And I'm like, man, that is kind of nuts, man. But I think, and hopefully, like, the chat doesn't crucify me for this. I know a lot of people love Borderlands and stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of the game, but when they showed footage of the game, it kind of didn't make me excited for it, just because Borderlands already has an awesome art style, right? Like there's a reason why the art style sticks to people's minds, and when they see that art style, they're like, okay, that's Borderlands, right? So how else could you make that better on a next-gen platform, right? Like, how good could Borderlands 3 be? And honestly, I don't think Gearbox actually had any answer to that, because what they showed was more of the same, which is not bad, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I have Borderlands 2, the pre-sequel, and 1, and I haven't finished them. What is 3 going to offer me? I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I have to imagine, though, it will look better than the first 2 games, because at least when I remember when I played them, they look like the colors were kind of washed out, and some of the environments look kind of bleh.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine it'd have to look better than them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm similarly not like a huge fan of Borderlands. I did beat the first one. I didn't bother to finish the second one. I just wasn't super into it. And I liked the first game at first, but then by the end of it, I got kind of sick of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me read some of the reactions from the chat and stuff like that. It's weird. So Kiflin says, I've seen comments that were like, I really wanted to get Borderlands 3, but this cover is too sacrilegious. DomHawk360 asks, will the game be about a cult? Maybe. I don't know. Of course, he provided the information about the child porn thing on the USB. Oof, that's really crazy. Madman says they need Jesus in order for them to properly release the game. Yeah, so basically it seems like, kind of like what Kivlin is saying, the community seems to be very divided on this game, right? Borderlands 3 was supposed to be this game that took all the fans of Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel and all the previous games and said, hell yes, we have a new Borderlands game, but instead it's creating divisions. Puns slightly intended, given that I'm playing that game recently. It's just... It's weird for this game to have this kind of very, divided audience, right? Like, the PC people are not too happy, about the exclusivity, of course. Some players all over the place are just not happy with the religious imagery. Even if it does parallel Christian imagery and stuff, it's still enough to be like, all right, that's kind of, a bit, too on the nose there. I don't know, where do you think this game is headed? Do you think it's gonna be
it's hard to say because the first two games were pretty successful as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, Gearbox then is not the same as they are now, and they suffered a lot of mishaps. Like, they released Duke Nukem Forever, which was a huge mess.
Mm-hmm.
They released that what was that game
Alien
called?
Colonial Marines.
They did release that, but that's not what I was thinking of. Although that is a huge mess. No, it was the game that got squashed by Overwatch immediately.
Battleborn.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had failure after failure after failure. Their name has been besmirched by themselves, by their own fault throughout this whole time. Not to mention, there was the controversy with Randy Pitchford not that long ago. And Randy Pitchford himself, even before the controversy, for a while now, has just been seen as this fucking prick that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Just when you combine all of this, there's just so much uncertainty surrounding Borderlands 3. It could be a perfectly fine game.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that there's all of this, it would... See, here's the thing. It would need to be more than perfectly fine. It would have to be awesome for people to forgive all of these years of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's succinctly put. Especially in a day and age when games are being updated, there are let's put it this way, right? When Borderlands 1 came out, it was the only loot shooter out there, right? That was, that hit mainstream. Let me add that qualifier, right? After that, obviously, still none, right? And then Borderlands 2 came out, and then Destiny started coming out, right? And then The Division. We are now at peak loot shooter gaming, right? There's so many options for loot shooters. And the difference is that Borderlands 3 is actually supposed to be a full-priced game, right? That has a beginning and has a finite end. At least that's where we're led to believe, right? So if it's not going to be a live service and stuff, it has to do things far better than a lot of its peers in this day and age. Because again, the reason why the previous games were successful is because they had no competition. But now they're literally walking into a minefield, right? They don't just have to compete with the loot shooters out there, but in all technicality, you also have to technically compete with the battle royale people. And a lot of people love battle royale and sinking thousands of hours in that genre as well. So your game can't just be more Borderlands. It has to be so good, like you said, that it has to bring people in. It has to bring people in and lock them down. I think that's the most.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. If I ain't gonna forgive, says Tomahawk. Wow.
Ain't gonna forgive.
There are people in the chat right now, they're basically saying, like, man, yeah, if I'm getting it on PC, I'm gonna wait till April. People are saying, like, Tomahawk saying he's not gonna forgive. Aliens was worse, man. There's just so much. They need Jesus because of the USB tragedy. Oh, it's a lot of crazy stuff. Anyways, let's change this to a slightly happier topic, because I know a lot of slightly. I mean, I think this is still happy because, Final Fantasy VII, the remake, is something that we're all hopefully looking forward to, even regardless of how it comes out. We don't know.
Hey man, I already got my Final Fantasy VII remake. When I put those new pre-rendered backgrounds, I got my remake. I'm good.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I wish I had those on like freaking console. So Final Fantasy VII Remake is getting a co-director in Naoki Hamaguchi. I know the silence there is so that people can think, what games did he work on? Because I've never heard of that guy.
Me neither.
At least
what has he done?
Okay, so obviously he's going to be co-director. This is actually
I better hear some heavy hitters. That's all I'm thinking. He's going to be co-directing Final Fantasy VII. I better hear he worked on Final Fantasy VI. He was on Final Fantasy 9. I better hear some heavy hitters.
All right, Daniel, are you ready for this? Is the chat ready for this? I hope you're ready for this, because I'm going to reveal what Naoki Hamaguchi has worked on. All right? You ready?
Let's do it.
Are you freaking rubbing your hands together? You freaking pumped?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is his first time as a director in the Final Fantasy series, first of all.
Okay.
All right. His first role was on the visual effects team in Final Fantasy 12. Before joining Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2 as a lead programmer.
Okay. All right.
And then as a lead project leader on the Mobius Final Fantasy mobile game.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
So
I like it's almost I could almost hear your thoughts just by that one.
Okay, well, so what do we know about this guy? He was on the visual team for 12, which
the gifts.
To be fair, that's a really good looking game. To be fair, it is a fantastic looking game. One of the best looking games on the PS2. We gotta give him that.
Mm-hmm.
He programmed FF13, which, hey, you know what? That game is optimized really well on PS3.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the PS3 is really hard to work on. So, props there.
Yes.
I don't know about the mobile game. Never played it.
I played Mobius Final Fantasy. It's really weird. It's a gacha game pretending not to be a gacha game, but it is a gacha game.
I see.
Yes.
So yeah, that doesn't really distill me with a ton of confidence, because he can program. Apparently he's also an artist. If he did the visuals for FF12, that's great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he'd make for a great director.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same as saying hey, the guy that worked on the CGI in the Avengers is going to now direct the next Avengers.
Yeah.
No, just because you're really talented at the CGI, that doesn't mean you could direct the movie. That's a totally different skill set. So
yeah. So, what you actually described to me is similar to my reaction when let's see. When Wally Pfister, he is basically the cinematographer for a lot of Christopher Nolan's previous movies. He went and directed a movie called Transcendence with Johnny Depp and Morgan Freeman and stuff. Great cast, right? Really good cast.
Great album.
Okay. It only made
by totally unrelated.
Okay. The movie made $103 million, against a budget of $100 million.
Oh, that's not, what's really bad about that is that's not including the amount of money that went into advertising. So chances are they still went over budget.
Yeah.
They did not make their money back.
Mm-hmm. Now, the only reason why I watched a movie was because it was part of a double feature at a drive-in. So it was like, what am I watching? This is like one of the worst movies possible. So, but, that's one example in movies. We don't really know why Hamaguchi got the role and stuff. Like maybe, like it's kind of like a weird mentorship thing where like, Nomura would kind of teach him some of the ropes in directing and stuff and the quality of Final Fantasy. I'm pretty sure there is a good reason why he's the remake co-director, right? I mean, I can only hope.
We can, fingers crossed, right? Like fingers crossed that it turns out okay and he's the right man for the job. But his resume is not really getting that across.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like why I'm afraid of the whole thing. And again, we're wishing only the best for this, and I want to be absolutely clear about that. So, Daniel, this is going to be exciting because we're going to be talking about Zanki Zero Last Beginning from the guys who brought you Danganronpa, dude.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any like inkling or like any connection with Danganronpa at all? Never played it?
I have it on Steam.
So it's in your backlog.
Yeah. But I'm not battling it. Oh!
Damn. There's a specific GIF that I'm thinking about right now that unfortunately I can't search for, but it's a bit of like, Like it's like if you could imagine like Kermit the Frog when the puppeteer just kind of smushes his face and stuff and like just like weirdness and stuff like like really like that sort of thing. Like that's the visual that I want to put like into the chat right now. But you don't know anything about this game, I would imagine, right?
Less than nothing aside from that it exists.
Okay, so this is not going to spoil any of the game because a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is already public, especially in the trailers and especially in the story, right? So the setup is that you're basically playing one of 8 survivors on an island at the end of the world. Civilization is basically dead, right? And it's your job, along with your 8 companions, to basically restore humanity to its rightful place, right? You literally are the last 8 people in the world. So are you with me so far?
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay. That's a good enough GIF, Kithlin. I think that's pretty good. So, also, by the way, all 8 of you are clones. Okay. And every time you die, every time you die, your body turns to sand, and there is like an X key on your navel that you can take to an arcade machine that can allow you to clone yourself, period. Okay? You still with me?
Yeah.
All right. So when you clone yourself, you'll start off as a child, and then every several days or so, you will move on to the next growth stage. So, for example, you start off as a child, then you grow into an adult, then you grow into middle age, and then you grow into a senior citizen. So there are 4 stages of growth, right? What happens is during those transition points, you undergo through excruciating pain to grow up. Because if you can imagine, if you're a child, you're pretty small, and it's like as if your insides are being ripped and your skin is being stretched, like within the span of 2 minutes to be an adult.
This is getting weird.
Right, yeah. So that happens, and you basically live through this entire lifetime for 13 days. 13 days. And then you die. Mm-hmm. So the interesting part
sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks, right? You think about that, and this is a hopeless situation, right? You literally now, mind you, if you die, you do get to carry over your memories and your mindset and your attitudes and behaviors, because the key, as it turns out, is your brain. It's a mechanical brain that gets injected into every single clone that you inject yourself into. So that's kind of the interesting part about this game, is that, there is no real death, right? And also, here's another interesting part about this game. Depending on how you die, you get a buff called a Shigabane. And what a Shigabane is, it's literally like a buff against the way that you died. So, for example, if you died when you were a senior citizen, you will live 1 extra day as a senior citizen. So instead of 13 days, you'll die on the 14th day. You can even stretch it all the way to, like, I think 16 days so far. But also, let's say your character dies of poison, right? So if you actually activate the Shigabane, and you activate Shigabanes, like all of the things that you died from, by the way. So, okay, let me take a step back. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? Like,
I think
about the ability.
Weird.
Okay, so think about the ability system in Kingdom Hearts, right? Like, you basically have to assign points to them to equip them all, right? So
right.
In this case, during the time of revival, you have a choice to just revive your character or revive your character with Shigabane. And the best way to think about Shigabane is kind of like those abilities in Kingdom Hearts, to have those resistances and perks and buffs, right? So again, like, let's say you died, while you were a child, the Shigabane is like, you'll live 1 extra day as a child, and that stacks for as long as you can afford the Shigabane bonus. And you basically earn points. It's weird because you're doing this in an arcade machine, and the arcade machine is keeping track of all the monsters that you've killed and all the creatures that you've killed, and when it tallies it, there is a cost to your revival. So it's almost like this weird metagame that's happening as you're trying to rebuild the world and, save the world from whatever was happening that made the world that way. Isn't that weird?
This whole game sounds weird.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's not yet weird enough, right? Each person signifies one of the 7 cardinal sins, with the 8th person signifying the original sin. The very first character that you play, which, by the way, this is completely available in the demo to play. There is a free demo that you can download right now. I highly recommend playing it because it's freaking crazy. The first one is Sloth. And essentially, as you're exploring dungeons, which, by the way, it's explored in a first-person kind of styled dungeon crawler, so kind of like Persona Q or the Etrian Odyssey games, Daniel, if you've ever played those. It's kind of like that. But it has survival elements. So it's not enough for you to just explore the dungeons, but you also have to figure, okay, well, your character has eaten too much, so they have to use the toilet. They're carrying too much, so you have to manage their stress. They're hungry, so you need to feed them, or else it'll eat your health, etc., etc. So it has this very core survival element to it that it might sound very, like, intimidating for a lot of people, but it's actually very manageable, especially in the different difficulty levels, because the game has multiple, right? But what, to me, what I really love about this game, dude, is, like, the storytelling is so top-notch, and the character development is so good that because the way that the game works is that once you finish somebody's chapter, you get to be another person in the team. So right now, like, in the very first chapter, I was Haruto, which is the sloth character. And the next one, I changed characters, and the next one, and the next one, next one. Now, you get to basically build a party with all 8 characters, right? That's just part of the game. But there is something to changing the main narrator that makes it so much more engaging than just like, oh, like, it's just characters talking on screen. Because you actually get to read, like, their personal inner thoughts. Like, there's a person who is wrathful, and just the stuff that he's, like, telling himself, it's like, wow, I didn't know you were this crazy until I actually played you. And it's and the intensity is just increased just a little bit. And so far, like, there's base building in the game, which is great. There's crafting. There's some really deep crafting stuff that you can do. There's a lot of, harvesting as well. It's I never really liked a dungeon crawler before, Daniel. Like, actually, even before, like, Caligula Effect Overdose, which we talked about a few weeks ago. But this game is like, and even Persona Q. I never played Persona Q just because I don't like Etrian Odyssey as a format, right? Like, I'm not into first-person dungeon crawlers, right? But this...
Yeah, me neither.
But this game, like, was so engaging. Like, I'm literally, like, trying to get... I'm trying to get like so many materials so I can build up my base on multiple levels and stuff. And this isn't like SimCity, right? Like, it's like, oh, you upgrade the kitchen. This is, this is level 1. Let's get it to level 2 or level 3 with materials and stuff like that. Like, it's so complex. And mind you, this is from the Danganronpa team. They started with frickin' visual novels, okay? And for their next game after V3 to be such a mechanically complex dungeon RPG / survival game, like, they did such a fantastic job with this that this is probably like, I'm gonna call it right now, it is probably like one of the must-play JRPGs of 2019. If you're gonna skip out on this, man, I don't know, man. This is literally like, this is amazing. And very mature, for that matter.
All right, I'm gonna skip it hard then.
It's tough for me to talk about this game without spoilers, because if you've played Danganronpa, you know how the twists and turns of those games like really push your interest forward, and it is literally in this game. Like, that DNA of the Danganronpa team's storytelling, it's like right there, like smack dab in front of you. Like, when you discover like why each person is of that sin and you discover them, they're some of the most horrendous and horrifying things from a personal and social standpoint that you can ever imagine.
It's funny because Darksiders 3 is also about the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, well, that's... Well, this one does it better. How about that?
You don't know that.
I don't, but I think even from like a storytelling standpoint, I think this does it better. It really does. And I'm not saying that...
To be fair, you're probably right, because the writing has never been good in Darksiders, and 3 doesn't seem to be much better.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. That's more of like a popcorn kind of like action game, right? Like, it's like, yeah, let's, love the action, let's freaking pop it in, do some stuff and explore some things and let's go, like, but
yeah,
this is
the story has always just been an excuse to just, fight and explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one is, it's so engaging. Like, it got me hooked even with the demo. And again, like, if you're not sure about, like, if you want to confirm what I am talking about, there is literally a demo where you can experience the entire first chapter with Sloth. That is, and the cool part about it too is if you decide to get the game and you end that first chapter, the save that you create is transferable to the full game. Not a lot of demos do that. Yeah, not a lot of demos do that. So it's literally transferable. Even if you play the prologue and the first chapter, you're good. It's free. I mean, you can't, there are so many people, including Daniel, are like, but it's, what was that game again that I was telling you? But it's free, and you were like, I don't know if I should download that game.
Homefront.
Yeah, I've never played Homefront on PC ever since. Like, I even gave you a hard time on it, but I was like, it's free, dude. Maybe you'll change your mind later.
I don't know. I did download Homefront though, but I haven't touched it.
Right. So yeah. So Zanki Zero, Last Beginning, go check it out. My review, by the time this episode comes out, like, my review would have come out, like, on, the previous Monday and stuff. That'll go into detail into the character relationships and, of course, some of the mechanics of the game. It is very mechanics heavy. Like, I never even talked about, like, how learning the skills are, because, like, that's just really crazy. So, like, each age has its own kind of tree and set of abilities, if you will. There's, like, a ability called pectorals that allows you to carry more things and stuff, which is, I thought it was kind of hilarious. So, yeah, definitely go check it out, like, if you can. Again, the demo is out there. Only on PS4, though, sadly. The PC doesn't have a demo for it for some reason. So, yeah. So, yeah. Speaking of which, before we do our last topic for today and actually talk about it, let's do some shilling, right? So, of course, if you want to support our channel and this podcast and stuff, please consider using our Amazon link, which is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. This will take you to the video games page on Amazon, but from there you could basically search for anything, and you'll be able to find like a bunch of stuff that that you'd probably want to check out. Like, for example, like I'm still reading this book called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. You're checking out the Chrono Trigger book, which is freaking amazing. Yep. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Like there was the other day, Daniel, like they were selling a 43-inch 1080p TV for $170. That's insane.
What?
Yeah.
That's a steal.
Yeah. And, there's like 4K stuff that's like, $240 as well. That's like 43 inches and stuff. It's all on Amazon.com. We buy a lot of Amazon stuff from like, PSN cards to books, of course, to audiobooks. Again, that link is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. But if you want to donate to us directly, just buy us a cup of coffee at ko-fi/My Backlog Battle. Once again, that is ko-fi/My Backlog Battle. And if you want to be like our Parslan Zora, who is actually like our donator for the previous month, you can also subscribe to our PayPal monthly donation list, which is mybacklogbattle.tv/donation or donate. Sorry. I can't remember a lot. There's so many links, Daniel.
Too many links.
Yeah. And mybacklogbattle.tv/donate will take you to PayPal. That's, that basically will allow you to subscribe to us monthly and, like help us out and stuff. And of course, you're probably wondering, like, where's all this money going to and stuff? Is it dropping into your, your Jack in the Box like funds or anything like that? No. This is all going into, improving the video, the sound quality, and everything on this channel. And of course, when we have leftovers and stuff, we are going to invest it in our community, because our community, without them, we wouldn't be here doing this live with everybody in the Discord at bit.ly/BBArmy Discord. And really, like, we want to build a community that's inclusive but also open to conversation and and really trying to learn from each other, as opposed to like really separating us, creating divides and stuff. And that's really like why I wanted the Backlog Battle Royale to be. And Daniel said, that's freaking cool, let's freaking do it. That's why we're doing the podcast live with the people listening right now. It really helps us out every which way. So again, if you want to join our community, it is bit.ly/BBArmy Discord. And of course, all these links are going to be in the description of the podcast episode. So thank you very much. Daniel, do you want to add anything to that?
You guys are awesome. We appreciate it.
Awesome. So we find ourselves with a topic that is really, really nuts. So everybody on the internet is talking about this one article that Forbes posted, which is called "Shadows Die Twice, Sekiro Needs to Respect Its Players and Add an Easy Mode." Now, at first glance, you would think that the topic is basically whining about the fact that the game is too hard, right, Daniel?
That is the implication, yes.
Yes. So the big deal about this is that it's actually not even that, but it's actually talking about how it needs to be accessible for a wider range of people, which includes the handicapped. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I know that you haven't read the article, and I think that's actually an important stance to have, because sometimes when you read these articles, they can color your opinions and stuff. So at first glance, like, how do you think about this issue right now?
So if it actually has something to do with people with disabilities, I don't think those are the same thing. I think making accommodations for people that suffer from any physical disabilities and just making a game that's hard or easy, those are two separate discussions, and I think conflating them as the same thing is disingenuous. I don't think that it's fair to hold it against the developers because they want to make a hard game that's an uncompromisingly difficult game. Because not every game is meant to be for everyone. So if the developers want to make this game that's really hard, and if they feel that, adding an easy mode would somehow compromise that, then I don't think that they should feel the need to put it in there just for the sake of it. Now, if you want to add features to the game or certain, I don't know, like if there's things that can make the game more malleable for people that have disabilities, that's a separate discussion, and I think that's fine. I think that's a different discussion because people like that, they deserve to enjoy games just as much as the rest of us. There shouldn't be a reason. There shouldn't be something that's holding them back from enjoying themselves in a game like everyone else. So that's kind of where I stand.
Okay, so that being said, this is being used as a platform to talk about video gaming in general and accessibility for handicapped folks. So I know you say, like, that's a separate discussion, but unfortunately, that is the discussion right now. Because, the examples also not just, talk about Sekiro, but also several games, including Celeste, by the way, which does have a mode that makes it a little bit easier, to kind of deal with and stuff. So in that sense, like, how do you feel then about the general, like, kind of attitude towards, like, the handicap and, of course, difficulty and stuff? Do you still stand by that there are just some games that the handicap can't play?
That's not what I said. I didn't say that there's just some games that the handicap can't play. I said that not every game is for everyone, and okay. I meant more specifically in terms of skill level.
Okay.
So, like, yeah, there are going to be certain games that you should do your homework, and you should, before you just willy-nilly just buy a game. If you're the kind of person that likes to play easy, very forgiving games, you shouldn't be trying to play Dark Souls or Sekiro.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't think that's the same thing when we're talking about people with disabilities.
And that's kind of an interesting conversation too, because, like, let's say I can only imagine, right? But I'm pretty sure there are a lot of, like, handicapped people out there who consider themselves hardcore players, I would imagine, right? Who do love difficult games. But if the game doesn't give them the proper tools to be able to play the game, how, you could imagine that, they probably feel like a bit let down if those tools aren't available.
Well, what tools would that be?
So, for example, like, maybe, like, the ability to dodge appropriately and stuff, like, or I don't know, like, because the difficult thing about this for me is that I feel like the Souls games aren't really that, like, when From Software makes these games, it's not with the intention of making, like, a freaking punishing game, right? Like, they want a very specific experience that they want to impart in every gamer, right? Which is, they want to provide a sense of accomplishment after every single harsh battle, so that way the sense of accomplishment is much higher, right? Like, it's almost like really, like, mastering a very specific thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's really good. Repetitive motion injury, unfortunately, is a very real thing for not just handicapped people, but for other people as well. That's actually a good example of things that would prevent something like that from happening. I think I'll tell you this. I think the title of this article is actually oversimplifying the issue. Because in order for a lot of handicapped people to be able to play games that they want, whether it's a later version of Sekiro that's a lot more friendly to their play style and however they're playing it, or otherwise, an easy mode is actually not the solution to this. And I think you'd agree with that. That
is exactly what I've been saying. I mean, I didn't put it exactly like that, but I think that encapsulates what I'm saying. Where, that the difficulty of the game and it being more approachable for someone that has a disability, those are two different things. You could still have a game that's really hard, but it can also be manageable for someone with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, like, depending on when we use the label disability, that is a whole wide spectrum of things, right? We just, like, I'm not going to list down, like, the kinds of disabilities that you can have, but it's almost an impossible feat to make a game accessible to everyone. And so, like, I feel like if you put that responsibility to the developers and say, we'll just make an easy mode, I think it would actually do a disservice to the other people who actually are playing the game. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, you make a good point. I was thinking about that as well, where, like, what exactly does having a disability mean? Like, it can mean so many things. What if you're deaf, you're hard of hearing? Like, that's a disability, and it's a very different one compared to if you only have one hand. What if you only have your left hand?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would hope, like, I believe there are, like, certain controllers that are made for people that they can play a game with only one hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I'd say something like that is obviously not the developer's fault. That it shouldn't be on them. However, if someone is hard of hearing, I think part of that is on the developer in order to make a game that there's enough visual cues where their hearing is not necessary,
mm-hmm.
and they are able to play the game regardless. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think it's half and half. There are certain things that it's on the developers to think about, but other things that are not.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about an example that I actually personally experienced when I used to be a streamer on Twitch, because I think this is actually really important. So about 4 years ago, I was streaming Dragon Age Inquisition, right? And it was, game just came out. It was brand new and stuff. It was a Saturday morning, I remember it, right? And I was playing it. I was in the hinterlands in one of the 10 hours that I spent there. And then somebody basically came into my chat, and he basically said, "Hi, I'm handicapped, and I was wondering if you can check if there's a way to map buttons in Dragon Age Inquisition, because I'm a longtime fan of Dragon Age, and I would love to be able to play this game. And of course, Dragon Age 2 didn't let me because of my handicap. So I want to see if Inquisition does that." So I took like a quick 5 minutes, from my game time, basically like looked at the configuration, learned that, yeah, you can remap things. He was like so eternally grateful, gave me a tip, and I'll never, aside from the tip, I would never forget that moment, because it was a reality check that basically made me realize, like, look, man, like, gaming is larger than just what we're doing right now, like streaming, you and I talking about games. There are so many people who have been fans of games, and maybe they didn't, they lived most of their lives not handicapped, and for some reason, like later on, they were unable to. In fact, ablegamers.com, which is a non-charity organization dedicated to helping handicapped players and stuff, the founder of it actually founded that organization because his friend actually couldn't play video games anymore because of her condition. And that's just such a, kind of like a wake up call to realize, like, that gamers are truly, like, of all shapes, sizes, and, and orientations and everything, right?
I want to say, I don't care what your game is. Mm-hmm. All games should allow you to remap the buttons. I don't care if you're making a game that only uses 2 buttons. Like, every game should allow you to reconfigure the controls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on that topic, I know Madman said Nintendo games are generally pretty easy, but some have motion controls. But I can tell you one thing that they do not have, absolutely. Button remaps. You cannot remap a button in a Nintendo game. Think about that. Yeah. And it's really sad too, right? So let me give you an example. Like, the new Super Mario game, right? Like, how, like, you basically have to shake the Joy-Con in order to do, like, a move for Mario and stuff? Not remappable. It's just stuck the way that it is. So if you can't actually do that motion, tough titties. Can't do it. But it's part of the gameplay, right? Like, if you look at a lot of the people who actually, like, play that game, they use that ability immensely, like, a lot of the time, in order to reach, like, gaps and stuff and be able to traverse, like, long distances. But no, can't do it. It's kind of crazy if you think about it that way. And to me, that's actually really sad. One thing that Sony did, I think about a year or two ago, is if you go to system configuration, despite the support of the actual game itself, you can remap every single button on your PlayStation controller, so you could basically, like, move it to a face button or a trigger. right? So if L2 is not a button that you have a easy time pressing, you can move it to square and all that stuff and work with the kinds of buttons that you have. Unfortunately, this is for every single game, but when I remember when they patched this in the system update, I thought that was actually really cool. And Daniel, you know about like the whole new controller that Microsoft made last year, right? Like that made headlines and stuff.
Refresh my memory.
So basically, it is a customizable handicap controller where it's literally just a box with a bunch of buttons in it, and it has connections where you can actually attach third-party peripherals on it, so that way you have multiple options to control a game. So, for example, let's say you don't have fingers and stuff like that, and you want to be able to press like a face button and stuff. So they have these big circular pads that you can hit, with a body part or something like that, and you just kind of plug it into like a specific button, let's say like A, X, B, or Y, or what have you, and you can have multiple ones. And you can basically configure it to your handicap. So it's not just like one way of playing a game. You can actually literally cater to, many different kinds of configurations and many different kinds of handicaps.
That's actually really great. I didn't know about. I don't think I've even heard of this.
Yeah,
but...
chat. Is there a way that I can have you guys like search for it and link it in the general chat so that Daniel can see it? I thought, I am a harsh Microsoft, like supporter and stuff. Like I want them to always make great products, and Xbox One was not one of them. I still don't think it's at its peak, but the one thing that I will give them absolute 110% credit for is really thinking up of this, this hardware that is absolutely freaking fantastic. It's called the Xbox Adaptive Controller, and it is, my God, it is like a huge step forward. It is part of their Gaming is for Everyone initiative, and, I was like, there's no way that you can say anything bad about this program. Like, again, it's so many people support it. Google Stadia actually supports it, which is nuts to me. That platform isn't even out yet, but it's supporting this controller, which is really fascinating. But here's the thing, though, that's kind of very interesting as well. One of the things that you mentioned is that, not every game is for everyone. In fact, it's something to think about. And mind you, I want to hear more from the chat about your opinions of this topic so that we can kind of incorporate it into the show. Video gaming, compared to any other media out there, has the highest barrier of entry than any other media because there's huge time commitment, and the barrier of entry is skill. You need to be at least pretty decent when playing a video game in order to progress further in and be entertained, right? That is very unique to gaming. So
actually, that reminds me, I saw a video that I thought was really funny and entertaining. I believe it's literally called Getting My Mom to Play Deltarune.
Oh dear.
And I highly recommend it. It talks a lot about trying to ease players or easing people who don't usually play video games and kind of like easing them into video games.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses Deltarune as an example. Mm-hmm. And, and he talks about his mother's experience playing the game. And he kind of breaks down like all the parts where she struggled and all the parts where it was hard for her to figure something out, and kind of the things that he did without taking the controller away from her. Mm-hmm. But the things that he did in order to make it easier for her to get into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty cool. I want to kind of read some of the replies that the chat posted about this topic, because as you can imagine, Daniel, this is a hot button topic, especially in our community. Kitlin says, some of us are getting old and feeble. Bro, I'm 39 years old and I'm playing Sekiro just fine, my friend. I'm just saying.
Shade.
And I'm just saying, here's a dude who can't beat the first boss of Dark Souls 3. What up? Anyways, Domhawk360 says he has a learning disability. Let's see. Badman, of course, brought up the Nintendo games being generally pretty easy, but have motion controls. Yeah, Nintendo has a history of not being accessible sometimes. A lot of the time, unfortunately. Madman continues, I wonder if the difficulty is why FromSoft takes all the hit, despite points being made that are nowhere near difficulty settings. And I don't... That's the thing, though. It's like... It's easy to basically say that From Software makes hard games, right? But really what they do is they make games that, you know, force you to kind of try to learn its mechanics as opposed to catering to your needs, right? That is the point of all the From Software games, is like, hey, you're going to learn what I'm going to teach you, as opposed to me trying to make it easier for you to deal with my control scheme and stuff, right? It's, you know, is that correct, do you think, Daniel? Like, that kind of mindset?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have an answer for that.
I mean, you're the guy who's played, like, a lot of Souls games between the both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, do you think that From Software are making games that are like, hey, you're going to learn what I'm going to teach you, as opposed to the other way around? Like, to try to cater towards, like, you know, the gamers' like needs and stuff like that. Like, for example, making an easy mode or something, or making a control scheme that is a lot more mash friendly, if you will.
Because I've never really thought about the games in those terms before. I've never thought about, like, is the game like no, it's my way or the highway. Because I actually don't think that's how the Souls games really are. I think there's more leeway than people give the games credit for, because Sekiro isn't like this. Sekiro is actually much more razor focused. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about the Souls games in particular, there's actually a lot more options than people give the games credit for. Like, let's say you're having trouble with the game as a melee character. Well, you can try magic. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that specific weapon isn't working out for you. Maybe you shouldn't be using a sword. Maybe you should be using a spear. You know, there are different. There's different options. So I don't really think it's a matter of the game going like, "Hey, it's my way or the highway." Mm-hmm. No, it's more. The game definitely gives you more variance in what you can do than railroading you down into one specific strategy or path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that probably was maybe too much of a generalized statement on my behalf, but, like, you know, that's kind of like how I feel when I play these games, because they are very unlike most games out there, and I feel like if a developer approached something like this, like, they would try to make it friendly so that more people can play it and stuff, but of course, From is like, no, we put in things to mitigate these things. You figure it out, you know, because, like, for example, like, right, like, in most From Software games, right? Where's the minimap? Where's the map? You don't need a map. You'll figure it out. You know, like, and
yeah, but at the same time, though, yeah, there is no minimap. But at the same time, though, I think the games do a really good job of creating very distinct locations, very distinct levels, and very, very intricate and deliberate world design that makes it so that it's difficult to get lost. Not only that, but particularly if we're talking about 2 and 3 and Bloodborne, there's also fast travel. Mm-hmm. And while there is no fast travel in Dark Souls 1 for like half of the game, you do eventually get fast travel after you get the Lord Vessel.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it is a more nuanced conversation than just, you know, because trying to distill From Software's design meta, you know, into one phrase and stuff, I feel like it's also probably, you know, a bit insulting to the designers who work really hard on designing their games, because they do have a vision of what they want their games to be and stuff. And again, I think that's why we're so, you know, we have such a gut reaction after reading that article title, right? Like, that it needs to have an easy mode or something like that, which is like, what? Like, are you kidding me? You know, like, that's like our reaction, like visceral reaction right away, because we know that a lot of the game is actually thought out particularly well and well designed for it to just be like a switch to turn on to make things easier. So let's continue reading some of the stuff. Kiflin says, I want to enjoy Souls games, but I can't. I get too frustrated, and it can trigger panic attacks for me. Some adjustable difficulty would have been nice for me, and people saying this game isn't for you is just insulting. And that's kind of the weird thing about gaming. And again, like, you know, I'm going to basically restate what I said earlier. Video games are the only piece of media that can have barriers of entry. right? Like, and
well,
that's
to a certain extent, right? Like, let me put it to you this way. Technically speaking, there is no barrier of entry when it comes to a book. You could just pick up a book and start reading it. But there technically is some barriers. You need to be able to have the necessary reading comprehension in order to read and understand all the words. And you also need to have a certain level of understanding of the material in order to understand what the message is. And I feel like demanding an easy mode, or demanding that the game be more quote unquote accessible is similar to demanding an author, hey, I demand that you use less difficult words and phrases so that I can understand it better. Do you get what I'm saying?
I think I get what you're saying, but I feel like there's so much more to interactivity in video games than just reading comprehension, right? There's so much more factors because you do have to learn the mechanics of the game. Okay.
Sure, I'm trying to find a parallel, right? Mm-hmm. Like, obviously there's more variables to it, but that's the closest comparison I think I can come to.
Right. But again, it doesn't address the fact that there are more barriers of entry in video games than there are what you just mentioned, right? Like, you don't need to be good at reading a book most of the time in order to be able to read a book, right? Like, you just need to be able to have attention, much like any form of media requires attention, right? Yes, there are handicap challenges, but from a base standpoint, like, that applies to everybody and stuff, right? Like, in order to consume video games and in order to finish video games, you need to be at least some form of skill about a video game in order to see a game through, like, because if
sure.
So it's like, it's the difference between me handing my grandmother a book versus handing her a controller to play Mario. There's in her brain, it's more difficult to play a Mario game than read a book. Like, that's really, like, what I mean here. There's that kind of, like, you have to wrap your head around it. Now, obviously, I'm using an old person to kind of illustrate my point, but, I think the point still stands. It's still learning the controller, being comfortable with it. In today's day and age, that's not a problem, especially for young people, right? But something to think about, because I think, like before and stuff, like, video games were kind of like this novelty, and now that it's being incorporated into our day-to-day lives, the fact that barrier of entry was a barrier of entry is not going to be the same 10 years down the road, because everybody's going to be able to understand the fundamentals of what playing a video game is, right? Just like,
sure. Yeah. I'm not denying that video games have more barriers, but you made it seem like there aren't any barriers for other mediums, and I don't think that's completely true. Mm-hmm. I think they're there, but they're probably more transparent.
Mm-hmm. And obvious, right? Like,
sure.
Because for example, right? Let's say, at the time Demon's Souls came out, right? You before you buy the game, you don't really know how the game controls unless you've read an article about, like how the game controls, right? Like, getting a book, like, it's not going to tell you, like, oh, well, in order to read the book properly, you need to start at page 56 or something like that, unless it is a fucking choose your own adventure book, which that complicates things, and let's just leave it at that. But anyways, I get what you mean. Like, I didn't want to make it sound like there are no barriers of entry for, like, all the other media. It's just much lower. You're correct.
Right. And while I understand the idea of, like, if someone's saying it just isn't for you and feeling insulted for that, I think that sucks. And I really do understand that, because I think there's a certain level of condescension from that, of like, well, it just isn't for you. Mm-hmm. Get over it. And that is kind of shitty. Mm-hmm. And I don't want anyone to think that, like, we're looking down on anyone.
No.
For just because they're not able to beat a game, or they're
hey man, like, there's no much more condescending about, like, From Software games as I am with, like, the 3 years it took me to beat, like, Father Gascoigne and Bloodborne, or the one time I don't know, had a tough time trying to beat, like, the first boss of, like, Dark Souls 3, which, by the way, still goes unbeaten. But Sekiro, for that matter, I was like, oh yeah, ogre dude, like, okay, I beat you. Like, let's move on. Let's, it's. I think I think a lot of like our skill in games is all relative sometimes. Like that's why, one of the conversations that you and I keep having over the past several weeks is how fast and quick how I was able to get used to Sekiro's gameplay, whereas you and a whole bunch of other people in the community had to unlearn the From Software of playing games from them so that you can get used to Sekiro. To me, that's actually a very interesting kind of conversation piece. So it's like, the fact that even fans of the series are having a hard time because it's so different, to me, like, is super fascinating. But going back to the topic at hand, let me read like the other responses here. Hid says, well, I have a slight disability. I have a lifetime nerve injury in my right hand, which affects a lot of things for me, such as heavy lifting, and I can't use a mouse at all. No problems whatsoever with Souls games, though. Sure, there are people with way worse disabilities, but at the same time, this is an over-exaggeration from the journalists and gamers, because people with disabilities stay away from these kinds of games, and people are using this as an excuse for having an option to lower difficulty in games. I would actually agree with that because, like, I know that they're using that as a platform to allow other gamers to, like, be able to play those kinds of games. But again, I'm not sure, and you and I agree with this, Daniel, that an easy mode is not the solution for this at all.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't know what the solution is, to be honest, because this isn't a field that I try not to talk out of my ass. I try not to say things that I don't feel confident in. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, this is what you got to do. I don't fucking know, because this isn't something I know anything about. Mm-hmm. But I sincerely hope that there are measures being taken to help people with disabilities so that they're able to enjoy these games that they want to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Domhawk says the theatrical cut of Blade Runner is Blade Runner on easy mode. I think that is a great example, my friend. Props for that. Damn.
With the fucking shitty, like, narration, like, my wife used to call me sushi, cold fish.
Number one Madman says, it reminds me of a comedy segment of Dara O'Brien. I can't pronounce that. Dara says, you can't be bad at watching a movie. He jokes about, like, if you were listening to an album, halfway through it asks you to perform the dance routine, and if you're terrible, it just restarts. And then he says, you adapt to From Software games, they don't adapt to you? ? MB left. He continues, what are the themes of this chapter? Book closest. Oh, shit. So, Kivlin actually adds, get good attitude is the worst. And that's kind of the weird thing, right? That's also something that was touched upon by a lot of these articles, is how the get good movement is such a poor way to address or to even, like, talk about difficulty in games and accessibility, because it's not really, like you said, about the difficulty. It's accessibility. And those two are very different things.
Yeah, and occasionally I'll tell someone to get good as kind of like an ironic joke. I would never honestly tell anyone that, like, unironically, because that's just a really shitty attitude and it's not helpful. I mean, what are you really telling someone? Oh, do better.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, gee, thanks. So helpful. Thank you. Like, it's like, what, are you unable to actually impart any meaningful advice? So you're just telling them, hey, just do better than you did before? It's come on.
It kind of sounds like a lazy response, right? It's like, you don't want to put in the time and effort to think of a proper response to, what could be like a cry for help. Right? Like, let's say you get really frustrated of a thing and stuff. And thankfully, you know what? Like, in certain parts of the internet and stuff, like, people are genuinely helpful. Like, in the Sekiro subreddit and stuff, like, I actually have been looking into that and just kind of looking at people's inquiries, and people are genuinely helpful. The Bloodborne subreddit is actually super genuinely helpful as well. In fact, when Bloodborne became a free PS Plus game last year, there was, I don't know if you guys remember this in the chat, and I don't know if you remember this, Daniel, when Bloodborne became a free PS Plus game last year, like, hundreds of Bloodborne fans basically, like, reinstalled their game so that they can help out new players to get through the game. That is unbelievably amazing to me.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the whole community bandied up and said, let's help these guys out. Let's make them have a great time in Bloodborne. Let's make their time in Yharnam as enjoyable as humanly possible. Because, of course, there's some things in Yharnam that are just messed up. Anyway, so let's continue reading this. Gumshoe says, I am having a harder time in this than Dark Souls 3. I'm thinking that he's talking about Sekiro. Kithlin says, it always trips me out that people compare Monster Hunter to Souls games. Monster Hunter is so much easier for me. And Gumshoe says, I want to stealth everything in Sekiro, and I just can't. So, let's see. And Domhawk actually adds, there are polite ways to ask for accessibility, but acting entitled doesn't help. It just turns devs away. And sometimes they actually don't do anything, right? Gumshoe actually adds, does there need to be a solution to the accessibility handicap problem? Worst case scenario, just watch a Let's Play. I know when I was younger, I could not beat Metal Gear Solid 1 on GameCube, but I had someone beat it with me, and he played the parts that I couldn't beat. You know, that's certainly a point. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think too, like that Sekiro doesn't have that co-op ability, right? Like Bloodborne, you know, the reason why Bloodborne breathed its second life last year is because of the community. Like they really wanted to make this game like really shine, and they did. Like so many players like came out of that Bloodborne experience like super happy that they actually downloaded that PS Plus title. And Sekiro as a solitary experience is a very different experience than that. Let's ask a few more questions here, and then we'll end the show. One of the things that, let's think about the design, right? Like, what are the implications of adding an easier mode in the game from multiple standpoints, right? Because you and I agreed that adding an easy mode is not the solution to this, right?
It feels like a Band-Aid.
Yes, actually.
At best.
Yes. It's funny because a game designer on Twitter actually said that, and he called easy modes in games a blunt force tool. And the way that he described it is that it is literally like a way to tweak numbers in a game so that it does appear a lot easier, but the mechanics are still there. Right? Like it's the same mechanics. And actually ever since we started talking about this and ever since the article came out, that Forbes article got updated with a bunch of quotes from game designers saying, are you nuts? An easy mode is not going to solve the problem for this game. It's just going to basically take away the sense of accomplishment from the people playing it, whether they're handicapped or not, And to me, that's kind of an interesting conversation in and of itself. But also, one thing to think about, and again, like I love Japan. I've been there like 3 times in my entire life. I have fond memories of that place, right? But let's think about this for a second, because accessibility and handicapped people is purely, sadly, a Western idea, right? If you look at Japan the way that it is right now, if you want to get to like the 3rd floor of like a building and stuff like that, well, you better hope that if you're in a wheelchair, somebody can carry you to the 3rd floor, because most buildings in Japan have no elevators. In fact, there are a lot of facilities in Japan that actually do not support handicapped people at all. Even though like there's a lot of the awesome games that come out in Japan is probably one of the countries behind when it comes to handicap accessibility, which is why when you actually go to Japan, it's very rare to find a handicapped person on the streets or actually participating in the public. They're actually considered as like one of the lower class citizens there, and to me, like that's really crazy. That just because you lost a leg or something like that, you don't have both of your arms, it's like, well, you don't deserve to be part of society. Think about that.
Sometimes Japan just makes me roll my eyes and just, man, what are you guys doing? Come on.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to basically indict like all of Japan for this, right? I understand that. I understand that like there needs to be a serious change everywhere in order to make this happen, because really, like, no one's gonna tear down Akihabara to support like handicap stuff. Like that's kind of that's crazy, like. it is really crazy to think about a lot of these things, but this is a very real thing, like everywhere in Japan, and not just in Japan, probably in other places as well. And again, that's why like I'm saying that the handicap stuff is like seems to be a purely Western idea, and if anything, like I can only wish that more countries would be thinking about the handicapped population as well, as opposed to like burying them, right? Like and thankfully, one of the things that I came to a conclusion today, especially thanks to everybody, in the chat putting their opinions in, and also like your and I conversation, is that I feel like if we want games to be accessible to a bigger amount of people, I don't think that it's solely on the developers to be responsible for crafting an experience that is, accessible for handicapped people. As we mentioned throughout this conversation, handicapped people is defined in a very large gray area that you can't just try to expect the developer to be able to compensate for every single configuration, every single possibility, and every single thing of like handicap stuff. Much like, and at some point, like, the developers need to stick to their particular vision and focus on executing that. Video games are already expensive enough to make for them, to even encompass. Now you got to think about like a certain subset of people, right? And I'm not saying that as like a means to ignore that population. That's not at all what I mean. But what I mean is that it has to be a concerted effort, not just with the developers, but also the people who are part of this industry, the people who are, maybe like the lobbyists and stuff who are actually paying for video, being paid for by video games and stuff to do that, or even organizations such as Able Gamers to help handicap players out in figuring out how they can best play their games, right? I know that Able Gamers, one of the things that they do is actually, like, if there is a particular game somebody wants to play, they'll reach out and, kind of give them the tools to be able to figure out how they can play the game based on their current situation, right? And mind you, think about that. That is a very situational thing on a per person basis, right? Like, let's say, and again, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody here, but let's say I don't have an arm, right, and another hand. Like, you could email like Able Gamers and say, I want to play Sekiro. How can I do that with my current situation, right? That's freaking awesome. And then using the tools that the different developers have, like Microsoft's adaptive controller, of course, if you have an Xbox and Sekiro there, you just might be able to play the game. But putting the onus on the developers to solve the entire world's handicap problems, or even the problems of like handicap players playing video games, seems kind of bad. Like, it's like,
I mean, they're already worrying about making the fucking game to begin with, and even making a bad game is hard work. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's so expensive these days, and that's the thing that I keeps bugging me, right? Like, and what's great is that we're seeing first party console developers like Microsoft and Sony. Sorry, Nintendo, you're not really doing good with this. Step up, like, try to making their games accessible. Microsoft has done a fantastic job with the adaptive controller, and of course with Able Gamers and all these other kinds of tools that handicap players can use in order to play the games. Well, maybe, like I said, maybe the onus should not be on From Software. It should be, it should be a community effort, much like how, the Bloodborne fan base and stuff helped out the rest of the community to enjoy that game. Maybe that's the real solution.
It just feels like From Software being not picked on per se, but they're being pointed out here because they're the ones known for making these hard games, and because Sekiro is their latest one, it's used as a scapegoat.
Yeah, it's a hot button topic, right? And of course that's the latest game in the series and stuff. And like I said, like, in case it hasn't been clear, it's not just the developer's problem; it's an all of us problem. So don't point your fingers at From Software. There's everybody else that can help out. Who are far more capable, by the way, of helping solve this problem. So, From Software, they made a great game, and I think that's the buck stops there, right?
Yep.
Right.
Wait,
Okay.
Before end of podcast, any hot take on the BioWare situation? What was?
That's not part of our conversation topics, bro. You should have been like, hey, man, you're going to talk about, like, Anthem at the beginning of the show, bro? Like, I don't want to be, like, I don't want to continue the conversation about Anthem. Anthem is, like, universally panned, right? Like, what is the use of saying, oh, they're in new light of new information, this is really why Anthem sucks? And I'm like, bro, like, that's just, you're basically, like, fueling coal, to the fire and stuff. And honestly, the game already gets enough bad rap that I feel like BioWare as a company, we need to at least respect them for, like, the kind of work that they try to do with the game. And that's not coming from a person who is who has enjoyed Anthem as a game, but as somebody who used to be a fan of the company, who feels like that company's about to die. I think that's kind of really the point here. And quite honestly, like, I think the most important thing to think about right now is, like, really, like, let's move past that, right? Like, we can keep obsessing about problems of today, but the biggest thing to think about is, like, so how do we move on? Obsessing about the problem isn't going to fix the problem. Let's fix it. And if you guys have any solutions on how to fix BioWare, then more power to you. That's the thing we'd love to hear from you, because every single member of this community is, it's smart, super smart people, very intelligent. Hell, you guys have beaten Dark Souls games before I could beat, like, Father Gascoigne in the 3 years that I played Bloodborne. You guys are more than capable of, like, the hosts here, to think about things. And at the very least, we can have this conversation. And I'm really happy that we're able to do this again for our community. How about that, Daniel?
Excuse me. I have beaten multiple Dark Souls games within that span of time. Thank you very much.
Well, who freaking who or whatever, man. You freaking douche nozzle. All right. Anyways, so okay. So before we go, Daniel, you've been working on a lot of stuff on your channel, right? So let's hear about that, and of course, where people can find you.
Sure. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Shintai Reviews. And if you want to follow me and subscribe to me on YouTube, it is Daniel Santos. You can also find me as Shintai Reviews. I just recently uploaded a discussion video about two movies, 5 centimeters per second and Garden of Words. They are directed by the same guy, Makoto Shinkai, who also worked on the movie Your Name, which you might have heard. It was kind of a big deal when it dropped. And that's kind of like a hour-long discussion video about those two movies. And I think it's a fun discussion, going in depth about the themes and the messages of the movies. Not just talking about the visuals, because that seems to be what everyone talks about with his movies. Even though they are beautiful movies, there's more to them. Mm-hmm. And I think the video does a good job of illustrating that. I think it does a good job of talking about the deeper meanings behind the movies.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you've beaten, like, all those Dark Souls games within the 3 years, but have you finally finished rewatching all those School Days episodes that you've been promising us that you were going to watch?
I'm halfway through.
Okay.
Halfway through. Okay.
All right.
It's just hard. Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard.
The chat is questioning your integrity here. Nice gifts, chat. So, yeah.
It's on a school break. They're very funny. I'm actually going to watch an episode.
Dom is giving you crap. He watched it in one sitting, man.
Hey, shut up. You weren't writing a fucking script while you were watching it.
Anyway, so in case you guys are wondering, of course, like, you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/mybacklogbattle, and you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/mybacklogbattle. And remember, please check out the Backlog Battle Royale Discord at bit.ly/BBArmy Discord. One of the things that the community has been really into is posting a lot of the music, and not just game music, but also music that they completely like are enraptured for and stuff like that. Like we have a channel called Listen Together. I actually started doing reactions to stuff because that's kind of like how we know that we're listening to those videos and stuff and the songs that people are listening to. Like one of the things, Daniel, that I was actually listening to earlier is something that Hits posted, which is the Chemical Plant remix from like Sonic Mania, which is a absolutely freaking incredible track from that game, which, man, I still need to finish that game, but such a great song. Chemical Plant Zone and stuff. It's really freaking good.
That's a good track.
Yeah. And of course, if you're curious about the videos that have been released or going to be releasing and stuff, well, last week, or rather tomorrow in this recording, I'm going to be releasing this uber mega freaking, oh my god, 15-minute long video called Kingdom Hearts 3, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About the Story and Love the Game. You've seen it, right, Daniel? I mean...
Yes, I have, Dr. Strangelove.
I tried watching that movie. I had a tough time watching Dr. Strangelove. It's so old.
Oh, come on.
It's I have it downloaded. I will keep watching it. But yes.
Dude, you and I do not mesh when it comes to movies.
No, we do not. But I did borrow the name of Dr. Strangelove for that Kingdom Hearts 3 video. And if you guys have at least played all the way up to the World of Corona, I think you guys will really enjoy it, because it is literally a stream of consciousness conversation and discussion about like Kingdom Hearts, what it means to be a fan of the series, talking about the story, experiences in the past, and really like what it means for us as a community to actually play Kingdom Hearts together, especially with Sora's like saga basically like going to its conclusion and stuff. It's really it would be an interesting watch, especially if you're just playing through Kingdom Hearts. So I do highly recommend that. And of course, as of this release, this past Monday, you will see a review from me of Zanki Zero Last Beginning. So if you thought that the demo was really interesting and stuff, which again, you can download the Zanki Zero demo right now. It is fully available. The save carries over to the full game if you have a PS4. The review goes into detail as to a lot of the things, but don't worry, spoiler free completely. I always make my reviews spoiler free so that way you guys can enjoy the game, and heck, even the demo, which already has a ton of spoilers already. So anyways, on behalf of Daniel, this is Alex saying take care, enjoy your week, and of course we'll see you guys next week. Again, at bit.ly/BBArmy Discord every 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and if there's any delays or changes in schedule, twitter.com/MyBacklogBattle. So again, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next week, and play lots of games. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like what you watched, please consider supporting me by liking and sharing the video, posting a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you won't miss any of my new videos. Also, follow me on Twitter at MyBacklogBattle for the latest updates on upcoming videos, or to just chat about video games. Thanks for stopping by, and let's all have fun playing video games.